It is time for listener emails, where I cover emails sent to me through the various channels possible. The brand new Sovryn Tech email, sovereigntech@riseup.net. Thank you, anarcho-commies, for letting me use your electrodes.
They've accepted you.
That's right. And I am, of course, joined by the incredible, astonishing, wonderful, beautiful Dr. Stephanie Murphy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Hi.
Always a pleasure to have you on. And it's an open door policy. Come on in, and you can take a mic.
Open door? What?
Whoa! Whoops! Sorry.
Inviting people to the party.
That's right. Anyway, well, the open door was for you. Everybody else, I'm gonna slam it in their face.
It's a private open door. Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. Anyway, no biometrics involved. So this week I got a question. I actually got this a little while back. I have a lot of listener emails that I have to cover. Please keep them coming, though. Please keep sending them, because that way also I don't have to transfer them all from the original Sovryn Tech email address, and they can get to the riseup.net. If you do email the other address, I'll still hold on to that for a few months, but so that's fine. But anyway, and this week, essentially the email was, Brian, you're doing a great job. Thank you. Enjoy your show, all which is great. But then it's, what's with the Romans? And
Indeed, what's with the Romans? I like this listener already.
Yeah, and I laid out the challenge before, or not the challenge, well, I'll call it a challenge, where I said it's like, because some people had asked, why do you keep talking about Romans, and what's the big deal? And I said, well, if you really want to know, some more people are going to ask me. So some more people asked, and so here we go. What is with the Romans? Yeah, I have a fascination with Rome. Actually, Stephanie, you're very much aware of this.
Oh, yeah.
And
more like an obsession.
Maybe an obsession. Yeah, maybe that's a good way to put it. And what it really comes from is that, and I'm not the only person. Actually, I found out I'm not the only liberty-minded person. I'm not the only anarchist who feels this way. Another one who's very popular, Doug Casey, I recently heard an interview with him, and he was pretty much saying everything I say. And I never talked to Doug Casey before, about this sort of thing. I never heard him talk about Rome. And what it is that Rome, if it wasn't for, and please no one try to take any offense to this, if it wasn't for the Christians who started their message of this world doesn't matter, the next world is the one that's important.
Yes.
We may have gone into space 2,000 years ago, or maybe 1,500 years ago, whatever. Because Rome was so advanced, and no one really talks about it. The articles come out here and there, but no one ever really puts together the cohesive whole and goes, holy shit, these guys were figuring out everything, and they were. They really, really were. And as far as technology goes, which of course that becomes an interest for me, but then also socially. Now, they still had slavery. There's no question about that. They still had slavery, okay? But let's keep in mind, we all still had slavery up until 100 some odd years ago. And one, of course, could argue that slavery still exists. Just everybody's the slave.
Well,
and
yeah,
I wouldn't debate that. I would say, yes, you're right. Because, try not paying your masters, your politicians, and see how fast you live. Or see how long you live, I should say. Anyway, so... Rome is not perfect at all, but it was very, very much ahead of its time in many, many ways. And part of that was its very humanist outlook at life. It's very practical outlook at life. And you can read, read authors like Seneca, even read, in fact, this is a great read. If you want to read the memoirs of Marcus Aurelius, one of the emperors of Rome, you're just in for a fabulous read. Also, Jesus actually had really very little original to say. Most of a lot of things that Jesus said that wasn't a quote from the book of Deuteronomy was actually originally said by a guy named Publius Syrus, just Publius the slave. And he came up with the golden rule. This Roman slave did 150 years before Jesus was even born.
Wow.
If Jesus was born. So anyway, they were on the cusp of everything already. Anything advanced you can think of now, or anything that's here now, they were They were getting there very fast.
I won't even get you started, but of course, there's the Library of Alexandria, right? You're still mad about that one.
Yeah, and in fact, I posted something. I posted it on Twitter too, where on 9/11, which was just a few days ago, I said, never forget the burning of the Library of Alexandria. You want to talk about, now were people killed when that happened? Yeah, in fact, the head of the library, a woman named Hypatia, was burned and skinned alive during that. And lots of people were killed because people were trying to stop fanatics from destroying knowledge. That's all that was going on there. There were no terrorists there, okay? There's, and there was no blowback going on. This was just straight up people destroying civilization and knowledge. Because this world didn't matter to them. It was the next world. And so anything that studied this world was heresy.
It's so sad.
And we end up with the Dark Ages. Okay.
Apparently there was a book in there that had history going back 100,000 years or something.
Yep. There was a guy named Berosus who we have some scraps left, because these books burned and some of the scraps remained. And, one of them was by a 3-volume series by Berosus that we know went back 100,000 years in history. I have no idea. Well, I have some ideas, but I have no idea what went back in that history. But he's not the only one. There's other writers who came out and they talked about history as being a hell of a lot longer than at that time would be 4,000 years. They said history went back very, very far.
You mean to tell me the Earth isn't 6,000 years old?
Right. Not according to the Romans. And they're a little closer to the beginning, I would say. They would kind of know. And so all that knowledge is gone that Rome was developing, started with Greece, and then, Rome kind of brought it into some degree of fruition. And that's where my fascination is because I think they had a slight advantage from us today. And that is that they weren't socially conservative. Okay, now, before I get on a railing about social conservative, and I'm going to try not to, my point in that is that because they were willing to, they could think, boy, how to even put this? They weren't held back by the idea that, no, God did this. They just had pure carte blanche thought that, so we got to figure out how this works. Now, a person can say, and they're kind of valid in saying this, that actually the Renaissance was created by men who were trying to prove that God existed, and that's how science restarted. And there's a little bit of truth to that. But really, we wouldn't have needed the Renaissance if society in general during the Roman Empire didn't suddenly get this case of the grass is greener on the other side. And so it's intriguing to look back at Rome and to see, just how, and it's also intriguing because the part that made Rome fall apart was really that whole idea that this world doesn't matter. It was not the liberalism. It was not the fact that they were having wild orgies, all the time. It was not this decline. They were Western civilization, and yet by today's standards, we'd say that they were the decline of Western civilization, like that, like it's claimed about America now, that we're in some kind of moral decline. They had the moral decline, but they're at the top of the heap. You know what I mean?
Well, now wait a minute, Brian.
Sure.
You could say that they're, just to play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
You could say that the Romans weren't socially conservative, and they were having orgies, and they were somewhat hedonistic and taking a lot of pleasure in life's pleasures. But weren't they also, hurting people, pedophilia, little boy sex, and things like that? There's a lot
of things. I want to say that those are serious issues to be addressed, and maybe those things occurred. But one of the interesting points to bring up is, do you know the name for a vomiting room?
Vomitorium,
right? Vomitorium.
Mm-hmm.
All a vomitorium means in Rome, this is what everybody thinks, is that a vomitorium is where the Romans all went off and they went and they vomited after they ate so that they still looked good, for the night's pleasure. And that's actually not true at all. That entire idea comes from the play of Julius Caesar, where it says that Julius Caesar went into the vomitorium and he was ill because it was an assassination attempt. He got poisoned. Okay, but all vomitorium is a large hall. He went to a large open hall to where he wasn't enclosed and couldn't be trapped. So the whole idea of a vomitorium being a place where Romans went to
be bulimic, essentially.
Be bulimic, exactly, is not true at all. And we know that.
Why is there pottery with people, having sex with chickens and little boys and stuff?
Yeah, again, that's one I don't have a really great answer for that, no doubt about it. But I don't think
that's not all the pottery, though.
Okay, but here's a point I want to bring up. Okay, is that I wonder how much that's being brought out and how much is being hidden. Okay, because when you go to Pompeii or lots of other places, there's brothels in Rome. Okay, straight up brothels. Attended by the highest of aristocrats, and in fact, even the women that were doing the servicing there were often rich women that they wanted to have fun as much as anyone else. Okay,
talk about a dream job, right?
Sure.
And they were respected, would you say?
Yeah, I mean these were women of repute. This was not Mary Magdalene stuff. This is these were high class women that went to these places, men and women, because there was equality. There was actual gender equality. I know it's hard to believe that there is gender equality because there isn't any now either. But at that time, to some degree, there was.
Well, if Hypatia is the librarian, that was like a hugely prestigious
She
position.
was in charge of the greatest knowledge vault in the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't get much, in my opinion, doesn't get any bigger than that. And anyway, if you go to these brothels, you look around, the walls are a mess. But so much is so well preserved, and you go, wow, why is this? The archaeologists that found it,
British archaeologists, 60, 70 years ago, if not longer, plastered the walls because there's all these wonderful sex acts going on. The Romans having a good time. Wow.
So are they just putting out the pieces that say, no, look how bad they are, and then covering up the good times?
I wouldn't be surprised. Don't believe the official story.
Yeah, I love Rome.
Got an energy spike. Launch.
In the third age of mankind, an age plagued by an evil empire that seeks to destroy humanity, it is our last, best hope for peace. It is Babylon 5.
All fighter squadrons launched.
Return fire. Well, freeze them!
Watch Babylon 5.
You can watch Babylon 5 and experience the greatest show in television history.